Have you ever heard the saying, no anime is complete without a baseball episode? Well, I'm here to take a further look at just how many anime baseball episodes there are out there, what makes them good and bad, and which is the best. In this video, I not only rank the random anime baseball episodes I've found out there, but I also answer the question, why are there so many anime baseball episodes out there? So stick around, there's a lot of baseball left to be played. Keep in mind, this is only for non-baseball anime, so shows like Ace of the Diamond, Major, Big Wind-Up won't be included. Plus, their baseball matches last like whole seasons, not a 20-minute episode. Whether you're a big baseball fan, or if you don't know the first thing about sports ball, some of these episodes are so crazy and interesting. I think you'll find it really interesting no matter your level of familiarity. So baseball episodes seem to be a staple of anime tropes, similar to how every anime seems to have a beach episode, like where they whack a watermelon, and then sometimes the watermelon becomes a giant anime monster, and then the cast has to fight the watermelon monster in their beach attire. Anyways, I found baseball episodes to be some of my favorites in shows, and I've always felt when they're done well, there's great jokes and hijinks, great action sequences, and I love seeing what unique baseball abilities different animes and characters bring to the table. For example, Sonic X has a baseball episode that I love because characters do things that no other anime can do, like Sonic can run so fast he can easily catch any ball, or simply just bunt for an easy hit because of his speed. I had a tradition the past few years of watching anime baseball episodes with my friends every 4th of July. But that may make you wonder, if baseball is America's pastime, why is it so popular in Japan? Well, in an effort to make this video somewhat educational, I'll quickly share some of my research with you and answer that question. Baseball was introduced to Japan in the 1870s by Horace Young, an American born in Maine. Horace was a veteran of the US Civil War who fought against the Confederacy as a part of Maine, and after this, he was hired to be a professor in Japan by the Japanese government. That may sound really random to get hired by the Japanese government to move thousands of miles away to teach, but it's important to note this is a product of the Meiji Restoration period in Japan. Essentially, Japan wanted to keep up with Western industrialization, economy, and culture, as Japan was really isolated from the rest of the world up until this point. There's a lot of reasons for this that would be too complex to describe now, but in order to help modernize Japan, they hired a bunch of international employees to work in Japan, ranging from government advisors to college professors to even regular technicians. Horace Young was a professor that felt his students needed some physical activity and showed them the sport of baseball. Other foreign advisors, similar to Horace, were also beginning to show and play baseball, and Japanese citizens would travel to America and come back with an interest in baseball. But this only laid the foundation of baseball in Japan, because baseball exploded in popularity 20 years later from one particular game. At a match played in Yokohama in 1896, a team from Tokyo's Ichiko High School convincingly defeated a team of resident foreigners from Yokohama Country and Athletic Club. It's said that baseball spread like wildfire after this event, and even children out in the countrysides far from Tokyo were seen playing with bats and balls. Nowadays, baseball is still one of the most popular sports in Japan, with several Japanese players having great success in America. Shohei Ohtani is currently on pace to be considered easily one of the best baseball players ever, period. So now that we understand the history of baseball in Japan, this may help us appreciate why there's so much anime baseball. And in some cases, like Samurai Champloo's baseball episode, there's a bit of Japan's historical context needed to truly appreciate it. In my research, I've found about 20 baseball episodes of anime, and while I fear I'm probably forgetting some, or there's some that I haven't included on the list, like Charlotte's baseball episode, and the baseball played throughout Little Busters, Sailor Moon's baseball arc that doesn't have too much baseball, but it's still really nice episodes. Feel free to let me know if I'm missing anything or what your favorite episodes are. In the true honor of a ranking, I'm gonna go from my least favorite to favorite. There's a couple entries on the list that are gonna be lower than people want, but I hope I can give some reasonable explanations for what I like in a baseball episode. Taking up the bottom spot on the list, Maburaho is an interesting premise. It's about a guy who goes to a school where everyone has magic wishes they can use, and while plenty of people can use hundreds, if not thousands of wishes, he only has 8. But despite having such few wishes, he comes from an elite family, and although his wishes are low in quantity, they're really powerful in quality. This causes 3 girls to follow him around, trying to marry him and stuff, because they want his genes. fans. This is what non-anime fans think anime is, like, all the time. So the plot of the baseball episode is that the protag has like 3 wishes left, and in order to try to get him some more wishes, they go to this magic hot spring. For some reason, a baseball game is proposed to them by a team of demons from hell, and if they win, he gets 1 more wish, and if they lose, they all get banished to a baseball camp in hell for the rest of eternity. I forgot to mention, if you use all your wishes, you die. So having only 3 wishes left kinda makes this a life or death situation where they'd be willing to risk it all for 1 wish. One could simply say, don't take the risk, just don't make wishes, especially when the bet is just for 1 wish. But part of what makes this show unique is that the protagonist is really kind and has used his limited wishes on small things like making it snow in the middle of summer to make a girl happy. So naturally, he's concerned about sending everyone to hell if they lose a game of baseball against Hellspawn, but everyone guilt trips him into taking the bet, saying that he's making them worry because of how few wishes he has left.
Let's do it, Kazuki! Even if we do lose, as long as I'm with you, I'm not afraid of being condemned to a baseball camp in hell!
The game in question is so nothing. Like, it's so nothing. The girls strike out, throw some magic pitches around the plate, ground out. Like, this show is magic. Can't they use their magic to make the game more interesting more often? Anyways, it's the bottom of the 9th inning and they're up by 1. 1 out, bases loaded. One of the demons hits a long fly ball to the outfield, so when the protagonist catches the ball, he has to throw it to home plate in time to get the runner at 3rd base out. He decides to use a magic spell to throw the ball super fast to home plate, but this creates an interesting scenario. By throwing this magic baseball, he either gets the runner out and gets a wish back from winning the game, ultimately breaking even and wasting everyone's time while risking everyone's life, or he doesn't use the wish and his closest friends all go to hell and play baseball there eternally. Due to his powerful magic, he throws the ball so hard it destroys everything and the game is called off. I will say this part is kinda cool. Despite the game getting called off due to the destruction of the field, he gets a participation trophy granting of 1 magic, so he ends up net neutral and the whole episode was pointless. Yay. This is going at the bottom of the list. I just don't care. One of the only real baseball aspects I can consider here was that there was a sacrifice fly to the outfield, creating the dilemma of whether to use the wish or not on the throw to home. Other than that, it just felt like a bit of magic nonsense with a baseball coating. Let's just move on. Jujutsu Kaisen. I know a lot of people that love Jujutsu Kaisen. The art and animation are great, the music is awesome. I love the openings, but I kinda dropped the show. I might get back into it someday though, but probably not. So I never watched the baseball episode before, since it's episode 21, and I only found out there was one while making this video. You know the meme of the guy with the pickaxe who gives up right before he gets the treasure? That's me dropping this show literally right before the baseball episode. But to quickly sum up what you need to know about the show, the characters are these sorcerers that fight cursed spirits, and the protagonist is a student in training. His class is meeting up with another class for a yearly competition, and this year the event is a game of baseball. The actual baseball game played in this episode is really short and isn't terribly interesting, but they do have several funny parts. The funniest part to me is when this very overbearing character, Aoi, is blabbering to the protagonist and a baseball hits him in the face. While this isn't inherently funny, what's really funny is both sides of players casually are saying nice pitch, as if he just threw a great fastball down the middle or something.
Promise me this, brother. In a second, if I hit a home run right here, next time you'll
Hey, nice pitch.
Nice pitch.
Nice pitch, Maki.
Nice pitch!
Really, it wasn't bad.
That was a good one!
Nice pitch, Maki.
Nice pitch, Maki. Wow, bro. Everyone really hates you.
The protagonist, Yuji, is on the ground tending to the fallen player while everyone casually stands there praising the pitch, and the casualness of the praise is just so funny to me, like they could care less. The game ends in like 2 innings when the protagonist, Yuji, hits a home run so high it goes over the character that's flying on a broomstick in the outfield. There's no real tension, no real stakes, and of course Yuji hits a home run because he's good at everything. I remember the very first scene of like the first episode has Yuji casually breaking Olympic world records or something. And while I don't want to sound like I'm taking a joke too seriously, I've always thought Yuji is a little too much of a Mary Sue, or at least that every other character is a lot more interesting than him. I think if you ask half the people who haven't watched Jujutsu Kaisen before who the protag is, they'd probably say it's Gojo. I would say the funny, unique thing that this episode does that I rarely ever see in other episodes is that every character has a little flavor text at the bottom that says some kind of characteristic about them. Like when this panda bear goes up to the plate, why is there a panda bear at the plate? His little flavor text says he wants to punch a zebra someday. So that's pretty unique and pretty interesting. Like there's definitely a lot of effort that went into the comedy of those aspects. But overall, it's a pretty uneventful, short baseball game. Not offensive, great animation, but overall, unremarkable. Dorohidoro. Dorohidoro is another show I haven't really watched, so there's some kind of plot going on with the baseball game I don't entirely understand, but it fortunately doesn't impact the game too much. There's these people going on a mission to attack the protagonists, and they wear these disguises on their way over. No comment. This baseball game actually looks really cool. The 3D animation and grungy art style make one of the most unique settings for a baseball game on this list. There's a bottomless swamp between second and third base that people have to worry about not falling into that we actually do see a couple people encounter during the game. The team leads off with a revived Frankenstein together version of the pitcher's best friend. I don't really understand the situation, but obviously it shakes him up, and the zombie guy hits a home run and then almost drowns in the bottomless pit. It's really weird, but pretty funny in some odd way. The animation is really cool, like even running the bases looks nice, and Kaiman, the big lizard guy, making this diving catch. As someone who hasn't watched the show, I'm probably biased towards focusing only on the baseball game and not the additional plot elements, but there's not a ton of diversity within the baseball game. Baseball isn't the sole focus of the episode, since the second half focuses on the pitcher who runs away with the Frankenstein old friend, but overall the baseball we did get to see looked really cool, and the setting included some really funny bits that are totally unique to the world of Dorohidoro, like the bottomless swamp, which always gets bonus points from me. Also, there's this really big scary spider guy, and he's kind of what I think of when I think back of this episode.
Now that's a heads-up play!
Up next, we have the My Hero Academia OVA. There's a My Hero Academia special episode where as part of some of the heroes' training, they're forced into playing a game of baseball. It's a pretty brutal game of baseball that totally anticipates heroes using their quirks and injuring other players, so the game has a condition that you can win not just by scoring more runs than your opponent, but also by leaving the other team unable to play. This episode's really just fine. It doesn't really feature any of the big heroes like Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, Ida, but it's still fine. The baseball game's pretty much a grudge match between Gang Orca, a mob boss orca whale hero, and Shishido, a lion guy who I do not remember ever seeing. So all the heroes that are part of the game in their training are kind of roped into this and don't really have a good time, but the animation's really good in this episode. Characters using their superpower quirks is kind of interesting during the game, like seeing Sugar Man eat some sugar to buff himself up before his pitch, or seeing Shishido punch the pitcher Fat Gum, who powers up when he gets hit so that he can pitch the ball really fast. But overall, I kind of think the game is just a bit boring. I think the funniest aspect to this game is that it's the bottom of the last inning, tie game, 2 outs, 2 strikes, and they get an alert there's a villain close by. The 2 captains immediately apprehend the villain and instantly return to the baseball game, almost without saying a word. They tell the other heroes to watch over the situation, and the baseball game ends with the 2 players knocking each other out. It's considered a tie because any other remaining player is helping with the crime scene and is technically not on the field. The animation and action are really good in this episode, and there are little funny, subtle moments like taking a dive so you don't have to play the game anymore. But overall, it goes pretty low on my list. I think this aired in movie theaters in Japan initially, and seeing this in a theater would be really cool, but the gags and overall baseball aspects of this episode are okay at best. But one thing I do have to mention is the voices in this episode are amazingly annoying and still are playing in my head as I speak. We have the mic announcer guy screaming at everything that happens, which can be a little grating, but he does bring a lot of energy. But what amazes me is how annoying this robot umpire is that calls strikes. Just listen to this voice.
What were they thinking?
Wow, that is super annoying. Like, commendably annoying. What were they thinking? But yeah, it's a fine special overall. Let's move on. Urasematsura. Urasematsura is a classic anime series created by one of the most legendary manga artists ever, Rumiko Takahashi, who, in addition to Urasematsura, created Inuyasha and Rama 1/2. The plot of the show isn't really relevant to this episode, and honestly, this episode is so all over the place it wouldn't help much. Just know there's a girl who's an alien. Honestly, that doesn't help much either. The plot of the episode is that there's a boy, Tobimaro, who shows up after training fiercely in the mountains, practicing his baseball, and declares a baseball match against this boy, Mendo, to decide a victor of their rivalry once and for all. However, Mendo's team is unable to play due to eating too much pineapple. Is this a joke or a reference to something? So the main cast offers to play with him in exchange for a month of beef bowls. However, Tobimaro's sister offers them 2 months of free beef bowls to throw the game. As a result, the baseball game has an interesting flow, taking several turns, and showcasing several baseball game tropes. The beginning of the game has everyone intentionally striking out in order to get the extra month of beef bowls, even cheering and high-fiving each other after striking out. Tobimaro hits a ball that'd be a home run, ending the game and securing the beef bowls, but Lum, the alien girl who's unaware of the bet, flies up and catches the ball, to the disappointment of her whole team, who wants to both go home and get the extra beef bowls for losing. But Mendo tells the boys he'll give them 3 months of beef bowls if they win, so now everyone tries really hard. But despite their newfound efforts, there's this team of royal shadow guards in these black robes that Tobimaro's family has, that begin to interfere and ensure Mendo doesn't beat their clan. They create walls, pull bases away, they even have like a giant fly swatter. I think the funniest part is when they bring the ball to Tobimaro on a small stick, as if it was floating in the air and being pitched to him, and it's hard to say how aware any player is of all these guards interfering, because Tobimaro hits the ball and it goes nowhere because of how bad he is, but the guards start running with the ball to the outfield as everyone tries to fight them and stop the ball. The game ends with Tobimaro about to be tagged as he's diving to home plate in a close play, but it turns out there was a pitfall on home plate set up by his sister, and while this ruins the game and the play at home plate, it kind of reveals that this whole game was just an elaborate prank, with the episode ending with everyone in distraught except the sister who pulled the prank. The main reason why this episode's pretty low to me is I hardly had any idea what was going on, and the ending wasn't too satisfying for me for them just to call off the game with the reveal that it was all a prank. But the interference hijinks were pretty funny, and to change the pace of the first half, in which everyone deliberately struck out, to literally fighting for their lives over an extra month of beef bowls, is pretty funny. Next up is Squid Girl. I remember watching some Squid Girl on Netflix like a decade ago, and it's not amazing, but it's oddly interesting in some weird way. The plots and resolutions aren't amazing by any means, but the characters are pretty zany and have nice designs. Also, remember when Squid Girl got added to Splatoon? Anyways, a girl asks Squid Girl to fill in for their baseball team as they're short on players.
Baseball? You mean that thing they squid on TV from time to time?
Excuse me? What did she just say? Is that the thing they squid on TV? I can imagine people hating this vernacular, but it's really funny to me. Like, sometimes she says puns like no kraken way, which is odd, but I guess kraken, like a squid egg cracking? Oh, maybe it's like kraken, like a kraken is like a cephalopod or whatever. Now, there's a couple scenes in this episode that stand out. First, Squid Girl picks up the ball and throws the whole glove and ball back to the infield. Obviously, she's new and messing up, but the pitcher is really kind to her, which still motivates Squid Girl to try even harder. And she ends up using her squid powers to jump in the air really high to catch a ball that probably would have been a home run, and she throws it back in midair for a triple play. It's a nice scene because the pitcher is so sweet to her, and the action of the triple play is pretty cool too. Later in the game, the pitcher is too hurt to continue pitching, so Squid Girl takes over. She uses her tentacles to pitch, which leads to funny actions and poses. Like, look at this, her glove is in her hair, air, and she has her hands on her hips boasting. Finally, the bases are loaded and Squid Girl takes 2 weak swings like before, but when the next pitch almost hits her, her tentacles instinctively take the bat and swing in self-defense, launching a home run all the way across town onto the beach. This shot is so great. It's a really fun exaggeration and a breath of fresh air from some of the more stale baseball episodes so far. Like in Maburaho, they have infinite magic powers and hit short fly balls and grounders. But even after watching all these episodes, seeing this home run here in Squid Girl flying across town is one of the most memorable visuals to me, and definitely helps put the show higher up than some of its contemporaries. Dorohidoro had a home run clear the town, but it didn't follow the ball for the aftermath like we see in Squid Girl. While this episode is kinda short, it's fun and cute and has nice shots and animation. It's a fun ending with everyone wanting Squid Girl to continue playing, but she refuses to keep playing baseball on account of her needing to uphold her mission of conquering the Earth or something. Next up, we have Dragon Ball. So I'm kinda lumping together a couple episodes here, as Dragon Ball has had several baseball games throughout the series. We should first talk about this episode from Dragon Ball Z, in which Gohan goes to high school. It's actually a pretty funny, entertaining episode because we see Gohan struggle to fit in as a regular student, like saying he lives 500 miles away and commutes to school each day. We then see him play baseball at school with the school bully. He catches a home run super high in the air and does the thing we saw in Squid Girl where they catch the ball and, to act casual, deliberately try to throw the ball with just a little speed back to the infield. The funniest moment in this episode is probably when the bully intentionally throws the baseball at Gohan's head. And while this is awful and should never be done ever, we already know Gohan's a Saiyan and won't be affected by this. But Gohan establishes that he wants to act casual and fit in, and he doesn't want to hit the ball because he doesn't want to draw more attention to himself. So the pitch is released, and while we assume Gohan will reluctantly hit a home run out of self-defense, the ball just hits him in the head and stops. The reaction of everyone is hilarious. Like seeing the bully's eyes pop out of his head when the ball he threw at Gohan's head actually hits him in the head. Like, why are you surprised? You made the sandwich! Anyways, it's a funny, light episode with really good comedy throughout. But that brings us to the episode of Dragon Ball Super, which is basically a grudge match between Beerus and his brother, who, in this context of Dragon Ball Super, are gods of destruction of their respective universes. There's a couple pretty funny gags earlier in the episode. First, we should note there's a rule of no destruction. So when Goku pitches his first ball of the game, it's obviously too hard, as we can see from the crater Goku made, so he's told to throw the ball slower. Goku throws a ball so slowly that the mom spectating fall asleep waiting for the pitch to cross the plate. We see the boys chase a butterfly, and it's just a peaceful minute of reflection. Obviously, as a batter, you'd go crazy waiting for the ball to arrive to the plate, and Champa, both angry and perhaps eager, launches the ball out of the stratosphere. Unfortunately, this ball goes foul. Goku throws another pitch, this time a little faster, and Champa still launches this ball, but Trunks blasts the ball out of the air with a ki blast and catches the ball for an out. The reactions in shock are pretty funny, and there's no rule against knocking a ball out of the air with a ki blast, so it's considered fair play. Seeing Goku struggle to figure out how fast or slow to pitch is a bit funny, and seeing him get swapped out with Yamcha is cool when you realize Yamcha was a baseball player in Dragon Ball Z, so despite him being memed on as one of the weakest characters in the series with his iconic Yamcha pose, which is kinda like the Family Guy fall pose, it should be noted he's like the world's best baseball player, which I guess is kinda obvious considering his strength compared to the average human. So Yamcha is trying to win the game for his love of baseball, and we see him get punched and kicked by the other players who clearly don't realize you can't obstruct a runner or punch him or throw the ball at him. But this gets thrown out the window a bit when the end of the game has Beerus and his brother Champa, the two gods of destruction, having an argument in the middle of the field. Things get heated and the field ends up getting destroyed. While everyone presumes this just means the game must be over and no one won, we zoom in a little to see the new crater home plate is in, with Yamcha, who is running on the play, actually touching home plate, scoring and winning for his team in the classic iconic Yamcha pose that I mentioned earlier. It's funny to see Yamcha's passion for baseball despite playing against these superhuman and alien warriors, but he's a fun underdog to root for the spirit and love of baseball, plus LOL Yamcha. Up next is Psyche K. Following the trend of watching baseball episodes of a show I haven't really seen before, I was recommended the baseball episode of Psyche K by a pal of mine. The show's about a student with psychic powers who tries to conceal them, but the twist to me is that his classmates are so eccentric, he's the normal one trying to keep things under control. At least, that's what I've gathered from the few episodes I've watched. So the baseball episode's really funny because it takes a step back from the game and points out all the cliche tropes we see in a sports anime. For example, Psyche's friend meets the team, and they barely have enough players to make a full team, but they have the fiery captain, the sly speedster who steals bases, the big, hungry catcher, the star player who can't play for some reason, in this case because he got in trouble with a gang and watches from afar. Psyche sees all these cliches happening and is amused by them, and this even extends to their actual tournament match. They have to play against the #1 team that's favored to win the whole thing, which is kind of a trope of sports anime tournaments. Also, if they don't win the match, the principal is gonna disband the team for some kind of agreement, which is also a trope you see in a lot of sports anime. I can think of several shows that include either trope of play the #1 team early, or win or get disbanded. The game's really funny though, cause there's times the game follows the cliches, and Psyche figures there's nothing to worry about, but then characters do stuff to deviate from the cliche scripts that concern Psyche. One example is that the other team is so good, they bring their alternates to start the game for them. Usually in these types of stories, the protagonists get fired up and beat up the alternate bench players until the regulars have to step in. Psyche's team has a pitcher that's so good, the prestigious team they're playing against actually tried to recruit him. So obviously he's gonna strike out all the bench players and make the real players have to step in. But what happens in reality is the bench players all hit home runs off of him, so Psyche needs to intervene to ensure the club doesn't get shut down, but it seems like this is more to amuse Psyche and to keep things going with their interesting cliches that we've seen. Psyche confronts the former ace of the team that doesn't play anymore and watches from afar, and takes over his body, beginning to pitch with him. The team builds up a bunch of momentum, scoring runs, but the other team brings in the regulars now from the starting lineup. Psyche is satisfied because this means that the cliches are back on track. This also means the other team will make a big comeback, and the captain will come back from the hospital to win the game for the team, and Psyche figures that either the other team will win, but the team will still get to stay afloat, or the captain will come back in the bottom of the 9th inning and hit a walk-off home run. But unfortunately, or fortunately, the other team hits 3 really hard balls that just happen to find the gloves of a fielder, and Psyche's team ends up winning by 10 runs in a mercy. It's pretty funny that they never actually got to really face the elite people on the other team, and that they beat the other team so anticlimactically. The episode's pretty funny and in some ways seems like a love letter to sports anime and the tropes that ensue. But my favorite scene of the whole episode is actually after the game, the team goes to a restaurant to celebrate, and here's where the cliches get really funny with how chaotic everything gets. There's the hungry character who eats 10 orders, the speedster stealing everyone's food and using a special technique to eat more food, or the cold, collected prodigy being mildly disinterested, saying he doesn't eat food after 7 p.m. Even the food on the menu they order is considered generic to Psyche. To top it off, their next opponent enters the restaurant, and not to be outdone, they all try to out-eat their rival. They end up tying, shaking hands, and saying, "Let's settle this on the field." So yeah, the episode's really funny and acts as an homage to sports anime that I think whether you love or hate sports anime, you'll really appreciate. Several times during the episode, I was reminded of scenes from Haikyuu and Kuroko's basketball, and it was just nostalgic, to say the least. JoJo Stardust Crusaders Part 2. Alright, I'm not up to this part in Stardust Crusaders, but it looks really cool. Jotaro is fighting some gambler and they play a baseball video game. Jotaro picks a team in the game that has great batting skills, but when Jotaro starts the game, he just starts mashing the swing button. Apparently he's practicing his timing as he's never played before, so he strikes out a couple times, then says he's got the hang of it, and the next pitch he hits a home run. The drama of this scene is great, and it's interesting to speculate how Jotaro has gotten the hang of things so quickly. Also, watching this episode without prior context is kind of funny because I have no idea what happened to Kakyoin, but I guess they're fighting to save him or something. The gambler gets a strikeout by announcing he's gonna throw a fork ball down the middle. A fork ball is a pitch in baseball that sinks severely. It's a great mix-up pitch because as opposed to a fastball that pretty much just stays straight the whole way through, a fork ball dips low and can really mess up a batter. Jotaro swings and barely hits the bottom of the ball, and they begin to theorize that maybe the gambler has some kind of psychic power with his stand power. Jotaro decides he's gonna hit the gambler in the ass with the next pitch, and instead of getting a result like this,
0-2 count right after the pitching change, he's won. Whoa. He popped that thing.
he slides back in the box and hits a home run, all but confirming they're fighting a mind reader. As a result, Jotaro begins announcing his pitches as high and outside, but somehow throws the ball as curveballs and forkballs. It's unknown how Jotaro's thoughts and actions are different here until it's revealed that Joseph was secretly hitting the buttons on the controller. So while Jotaro was thinking the truth, he didn't have the chance to actually hit the buttons to make his actions come true. This is a pretty creative baseball match, especially since it takes place inside a game. The mind games and drama of it all is pretty fun, and I think it's a testament to the timing and drama JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is known for. Because without these elements, the plot of the episode would be a bit simplistic. A baseball video game where the villain tries to read the protag's mind, but another character is controlling the game can be as simple or as dramatic as the pacing and writing allow it to be. The action was cool, it was filled with drama, and it was really cool seeing the game from the inside. On top of that, I was left guessing until the very end how Jotaro was tricking him, which in a way is a staple of JoJo writing. Like, seeing JoJo memes or fights out of context feels like this scene from SpongeBob.
I lose! But it's not Tuesday, Patrick. Tartar sauce!
Next up is Brand New Animal, Studio Trigger's take on Beastars. The plot of this episode is that the main character is watching a baseball game between the Bears and the Flamingos. The Bears have never won a game and are the laughingstock of the league. However, the baseball they play is extremely brutal, and when the Bears have too many injured players, they ask the main character Tanuki Girl to fill in. With her amazing abilities and unique animal powers, she's able to carry the Bears to victory and is asked to become a regular. She's reluctant, but seeing the poor, rundown conditions the Bears baseball team live in, decides to join under the condition that they don't try to injure the other team. As we've seen all the animals play extreme baseball with the intent of winning at whatever brutal cost so far. But the coach of the Bears team has been fixing their games to always deliberately lose, unknown to his players even. He's in an illegal sports betting ring, and his life is put in danger when the Tanuki Girl starts winning matches and messing up their gambles, despite his best efforts to throw the games. The coach is told by the illegal sports bettors that if they don't lose the final game, they'll kill him, so he naturally makes a deal with his players that he'll pay them all to throw the game. He tells everyone this but Michiru, presumably because she's not really part of the team, or she doesn't live in the poor neighborhood, or possibly because she probably wouldn't agree to fix the match. While this final game is going on, the coach of the Bears is busy stealing the safe full of the gambled money, and when the heads of the gambling ring find out, they board it out for the whole stadium to hear. The fans are enraged, throwing trash and bottles onto the field, shouting baseball isn't fun without gambling, but Michiru still takes the mound. She begins throwing the pitches against the concrete wall as hard as she can, angry at her team for deliberately losing this match. Michiru's spirit motivates the team though, and the Bears take the field again with a new resolve to win. The game resumes, and the energy and passion from both sides create a really exciting baseball game that the crowd actually cheers for, despite their gamble money already being lost. I think this episode creates a really interesting dynamic on the genre or trope of sports games being rigged, or some teammates rigging a game where others don't, because the sports betting aspect really challenges the love of the game from the crowd. And in an era where sports betting and fantasy sports have taken the world by storm, it's really cool to see an episode that challenges how much the fans would like a sport without without the gamble on the line. The game ends with the Bears losing by a run, but it's really sweet to see them all try their hardest. Even the coach having a change of heart and rooting on his team, as he remembers his past as one of the first animals to play integrated baseball, and the segregation and harassment he faced in his younger days. The money the coach had stolen was taken back by Michiru's wolf detective partner guy, so the gamble got to resume at the end, and because of this and the Bears losing, the coach gets spared and gets to live, and he swears off his gambling and match throwing days. The Bears end the episode with a new resolve to train and win, but they took out a big loan to get new fancy equipment, so yeah, it's a pretty funny ending. Studio Trigger never disappoints in terms of animation. All the animal designs were really cool, and the baseball was really fun to watch. On top of all that, the plot is one of the more extensive ones on this list. I love that the plot includes the reactions of the crowd when they watch baseball without money on the line, and while part of me would love to see that aspect pushed even further, I think this episode managed to cover so many different aspects, and it didn't disappoint in terms of the amount of action and sport we got to see with such a deep plot. Assassination Classroom. Alright, finally we get to a show I've actually watched and love, and boy do I love this baseball episode. This show's about a class of the school's worst students who end up with an alien teacher who trains them to be assassins so they can one day destroy their alien teacher or else he'll blow up the earth. The students learn how to apply themselves more, and their spy and assassin training influences their skills and other aspects of their lives and studies. It's a crazy premise, but it's helpful for understanding the episode and setting. The school emphasizes the social status of those at the top class, the A class, versus the losers of the bottom of the school in the E class. But we see throughout the show, students in the E class have talents or are intelligent, but they usually have some kind of flaw that holds them back from being in a higher class, or they have somewhat unconventional talents and skills. There's a school baseball festival in which the A class beats up on the E class for the whole school to watch and laugh at, but one of the characters in the E class actually was on the baseball team before getting kicked off due to his grades and eventually getting demoted to the E class. The baseball player that's in the E class says he got depressed when his pitches became very hittable, turning him into a bench warmer, which subsequently caused his grades to fall, leading him to his spot in E class. The E class wants to put an end to the yearly mockery of the A class beating up on those weaker than them and prove a lesson to the school, so their alien teacher, Koro Sensei, who can move at the speed of light among other things, trains them before the big game. In the actual baseball game, the E class starts off batting, facing against the ace pitcher of the school's baseball team. The batters are all laying down bunts, and it's revealed they practice against Koro Sensei, who would fly and throw baseballs at astonishing speeds, causing the pitches of the school's ace to pale in comparison, even looking like they're in slow motion. They bunt the bases loaded, and the A team brings their whole team to the infield, which puts a ton of pressure on the batter and prevents the option of bunting the ball again. But the former baseball player that's in the E class hits a ball to the outfield, giving the team an easy 3-run lead. Things get interesting in the bottom of the final inning, as our heroes are in the lead 3-2, with the baseball prodigy in A class up to bat. Karma, this red-haired guy in the E class, acts as a troll like he usually is in the show, and he ends up standing right in the batter's face as he's getting ready to swing the bat. As the two main characters are standing just outside the range of the bat swing, daring the hitter to make contact with the ball, the A team questions if it's even legal to stand that close to the batter. But Karma points out how the A team brought their whole field into the infield in the first inning, and that's potentially illegal, but this decision is up to the umpire's discretion, and because the umpire didn't call any issue with that then, there shouldn't be any issue with Karma standing in the batter's face here. He narrowly, yet casually, dodges the bat at the last moments, just like his assassin training has honed his reflexes and sight, and the batter is so rattled he ends up hitting a weak ball that leads to this pretty cool triple play to end the game.
Heads up, Nagisa! Throw it to third base!
Kimura, come on, throw it to first base! Go for it!
Done and done!
Triple play! The game is over! I can't even... This is insane!
Overall, I really love this episode as a baseball episode, or as an episode of Assassination Classroom. It's fun to see how the E-Class strategized and trained for the game, and the visual of Karma standing in the batter's face is so cool to me. Like, this goes so hard. I'd like to say it's also a good representation of what the show is about. It's all about these students studying and working hard, and representing more than what their current grades are. But you see them play this game of baseball like an assassin, and it's really cool and badass.
What the? Something's not right about these people. Are they playing baseball or something else?
The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. As you may know, Haruhi is a show that has several different watch orders for its first season, which is really cool but really annoying. Haruhi is a show that asks the question, what if the Manic Pixie Dream Girl was really fun and also had the potential to create and destroy worlds like a god? If you're unfamiliar, that might sound confusing, but just stick with me here. So Haruhi wants to play baseball and signs her club up for a baseball tournament. They end up getting some random people to help fill in for the team, including this main grumpy character Kyon's 10-year-old sister, and to add on to the troubles of this thrown together team, they end up playing in the first round against a team of college baseball players who are favored to win this whole thing. And the only team member that seems to have ever played baseball before is Haruhi. Honestly, it's hard to tell if Haruhi has ever played before. She seems like she's great at anything she puts her mind to. Also, see how that trope of playing the big team in the tournament first round from Psyche K shows up here? It's kind of funny, like, they predicted this trope, even though Psyche K came out after this episode did. They have a practice before the match in which Haruhi asks the school's baseball team if they can use the field. Haruhi uses the cuteness of the gals to force the baseball team to let them play, but not only does she force her club members to take fielding practice, she also gives the baseball team an ass-kicking workout, which is so funny. Like, Haruhi is amazing.
Alright, you guys! That's it for today!
The funniest part of this practice has to be this quiet and somewhat emotionless character Yuki letting every baseball whiz by her at 100 miles per hour. But if the ball is hit in a way that it would actually hit her, she effortlessly moves her glove to catch the ball and drops it without a thought, like she's spending the most minimal amount of energy to not get hurt, or her body's protecting herself on its own. When the baseball game starts, the stakes are instantly raised when Kyon is informed that Haruhi getting bored or angry at this baseball game could cause a rift to be created in the world, potentially destroying it. So now the baseball game is being played with the future of the planet on the line. And it's only known by a few players, not even to Haruhi it seems. Kyon gets Yuki to use some of her magic to help the team hit some dingers, some absolute swamp donkeys. And Yuki behind the plate casts some kind of spells to speed up the pitches. Even without the magic, there's still funny and cool moments, like Kyon needing to catch a fly ball in the outfield like his life is on the line.
Gotta catch it! Gotta catch it!
Wow, amazing!
Because it is, and getting this really cool diving catch. The game ends with Yuki dropping the third strike and the runner making his way to second base. Yuki launches the ball so fast that the glove comes off of Haruhi's hand with the ball in it, all the way to center field.
Second base!
What the?
I'm terribly sorry, but you see, we're not the typical team of athletes you're used to playing.
All's well that ends well though, because Haruhi is satisfied enough to stop playing in the tournament, so they let the baseballers they played against actually continue in the tournament in their place. And the world didn't get destroyed. Yay. So yeah, I really love this episode. I think it's a fun baseball episode, and thematically it works really well for the world of Haruhi. Next up, we have Sonic X. I wasn't a huge fan of Sonic X, but I do think it was a really cool concept for Sonic fans, and it's great YouTube poop material.
Sonic. He's crazy.
Are you crazy?
That's
Dang, that's nostalgic. My favorite Sonic series is Underground, so feel free to disregard any of my opinions on anything ever. Anyways, I've always really appreciated Sonic X's baseball episode. As I've mentioned, I think baseball episodes are at their best when they showcase characters playing baseball in really unique ways, allowing the characters to showcase their special powers, and what makes the show unique. In this case, Sonic is about a hedgehog that can run super fast, so it's funny to see him bunt the ball and easily run to first base, or Sonic running all the way out of the stadium at Sonic speed to catch a home run. But the home run counts anyways because he caught the ball while standing outside the field, which is kind of a double whammy of showing the character's powers and showing funny quirks of baseball rules. Watching the dub of this episode made me tilt my head at a few things they said, so I meticulously compared the sub and the dub of these episodes.
How could anybody hit a ball that fast?
Loser.
Eggman doesn't call Chris a loser in the original sub, he just says, "Good work, keep it up," to his own pitcher. But this is way more funny, the dub can be so mean-spirited. Continuing the trend of overthinking and overanalyzing this episode, why put everyone's least favorite character, Chris Thorndike, up to bat first? I believe his primary character trait is sucking at everything, and that's no different here. We have superpowered characters all throughout this team, and yet Chris bats first. One scene in this episode ingrained in my memory is when Tails is up to bat and the robot pitcher extends his arm all the way to home plate, then releases the ball an inch away. It's really funny and memorable, but I also think what if someone had freakishly long arms like this in real life? They'd have an amazing pitch, even if they can't throw fast. Knuckles was also reluctant to help the team play, but there was a Chaos Emerald on the line of this baseball game, and he just hits absolute dingers. But why does he give this look when he hits a home run? Who is he looking at like this? He didn't even want to play. It's pretty funny though, and I'd say it's in character. So the game is in the bottom of the ninth with Chris up to bat. He's nervous and scared, but Sonic tells Chris to believe in himself, and despite Chris's best efforts, he strikes out, and that's how the game ends.
Strike 3.
At least I tried my best.
Just kidding. Although Chris does actually strike out, there's a rule in baseball we've seen earlier, like in the Haruhi episode, where if the third strike is dropped by the catcher, the batter can run to first base, and he would actually need to be thrown out at first base by the catcher. If you don't follow baseball, that rule might be a bit confusing. The rule of a runner being able to run on a dropped third strike is actually a carryover in baseball from its first days being played. Even then, it seems like a carryover of old baseball in a game similar to baseball in which you'd be able to run to first base even if you can't hit the ball. This would allow even the worst batters to still get the thrill of participating actively, or if you want to be a jackass, you could call it a 19th century participation trophy. But yeah, Chris runs to first on the drop third strike and is safe, which I guess is a realistic compromise of Chris's abilities, perhaps suggesting while you won't become great instantly, having confidence and working hard may present an opportunity like it did here. So they basically win. I mean, Eggman then turns a robot into a bomb on Sonic's head and escapes with the Chaos Emerald the whole baseball game was for in the first place. There's also a whole thing about reviving the baseball stadium and the owner making amends with the groundskeeper who's been still holding up the field. The plot isn't as deep as an episode like Brand New Animal, but I think this is a really classic baseball episode that's filled to the brim with action and comedy. There's too many gags to talk about, like Amy hitting the ball with her mallet, Cream pretending to be cutesy to draw a walk, even putting the Chow up to plate with his incredibly small strike zone. It's just a great episode and holds a special place to me.
Ball 1. Ball 2. Ball 3. Ball 4. Take your base.
You big loser! You call yourself a pitcher?
Angel Beats. Angel Beats was a show that I actually watched for the baseball episode, so the first time I saw this episode, I didn't really have the context of what was going on. But I feel I pieced it together pretty well. The baseball episode was so good, I actually ended up watching the whole show. And it's a surprisingly great show, really. Like, I almost want to make a video just recapping Angel Beats. So let me know if you'd like to see that. I'll give the quick premise of the show up to this point, but it is really hilarious having no context. Because watching a girl during this baseball episode balance a broom on her hand is one of the funniest visuals ever. But the show's basically about these teenagers that are in this afterlife purgatory school, and if they satisfy their souls or resolve their reason their soul is still hanging on, they'll be obliterated, which essentially means having their soul move on from this purgatory and or being reincarnated. So in the baseball episode, the characters assemble a team for the school tournament. It's a little hard to explain why, but essentially the club manager wants to win to prove their worth against the quote-unquote antagonist of the series, Angel, who isn't really antagonizing at all.
Man, she's so not cute.
The least she could do is try provoking us.
This blue-haired character Hajime tries to recruit characters for their team, but most people are already on teams, causing them to be left with the remaining misfits of the school. There's a very serious girl who's upset about losing to the orange-haired protagonist, Otonashi, in a previous episode, so in order to prove she has a higher concentration than Otonashi, she balances a broom on her hand.
Ever since that day, I've been balancing this stupid broom on the tip of my finger.
She's a moron.
Yeah, but she's a powerful moron.
I have no idea why, but this is hilarious. There's also this battle axe guy who's really intense, going so far as to create a tennis match against his own batter because he's not satisfied with how weak his own teammate's hit was.
He did it! Yay! Huh? Come on! Is that the best you got? Huh? What was that? You're not done yet! Come on! Come on! That's not a sport!
This dynamic is brought up again as they're the battery of the team, creating a rivalry between the pitcher and catcher of this damn team. I also want to quickly mention, I really love the animation of this show, and I love the art style. It's got this late 2000s harsh digital style, reminiscent of some visual novels like Umineko, and I think it's funny Otonashi doesn't have any experience pitching, but he pitches this sidearm style, usually referred to as submarine style. It's a really cool, really unique pitching motion, and it's not easy to learn, and there's literally a few dozen players you can find that have ever pitched submarine at a significant level ever. So to say a total newbie to baseball can suddenly throw advanced pitches at a basically upside down release point is kind of funny, but it looks really cool. I love watching it, so hey, I'm not complaining. The only player that seems to have played baseball before is Hajime, as we see a flashback of him playing baseball back when he was alive, looking up at a fly ball in the sky, almost traumatically. Hajime reveals when he was alive, there was a pop fly hit to him to end a game that could bring his team to the national tournament, but he can't remember what happened. He suspects he must have missed the catch, and it's haunting him still to this day. Later on, we see another flashback revealing he did indeed drop the ball, losing the game for his team. In the locker room, he's approached by someone who offers him some kind of drug, saying it'll help him cope with the pain. And from this, we gather the reason he's here in the afterlife is caused by this day. While he likely died from the drug, what haunts him is dropping the ball and letting down his team. The baseball game ends in a dramatic moment where Hajime is going to catch a fly ball, ending the cycle and potentially removing himself from the world, as catching this baseball would probably put his soul at peace and fixing his situation. The moment's done so well with the music and the dramatic expressions, it's so emotional and well done. Otonashi tries to stop him from catching the ball because he doesn't want to lose him, and right as the baseball approaches Hajime's glove, this pink-haired girl tackles him as payback for him constantly making fun of her and putting her in a headlock when she does something annoying. So yeah, while this might seem like an annoying, deflating ending like we've seen in some of the other series so far, like the Urasematsura episode, I actually think this one's pretty funny. I can't say I was expecting that twist, and everyone's reaction is so real.
Hey! Runner in! Game over!
I'll never forgive you for this! I could have caused a die! Die!
Both of you,
My happiness
go
was on
die.
the line!
The episode almost feels like we dodged a bullet of what would happen if Hajime caught the ball. Would this be enough for him to have been obliterated and reincarnated? It definitely motivated me to watch the show, as I've always known this is regarded as a classic of the late 2000s, kinda like Haruhi. And yeah, I really ended up loving the show. This goes in my top 5 baseball episodes because of the great art and animation, really funny moments like a girl holding a broom while playing baseball or a guy with a battle axe. But of all the shows on this list, this is easily the most emotional baseball episode for me. The pain of letting your team down is so real and relatable. I really feel for Hajime. And just the slight mystery of not knowing what happened in his baseball game, but having the gut feeling it must be bad if he can't remember, and that must be why he's here, is so mysterious and captivating, and kept me interested the whole way through. At number 2, we have the baseball episode of Pokemon Sun and Moon. When Pokemon Sun and Moon first got announced, a lot of people looked at the art style and what Ash looked like with absolute horror. But then people saw the show in motion and it looks amazing. It just goes to show how a simple art style can totally lead to easier animation, which in turn makes more fluid animation. I'd be willing to say that this episode is probably my favorite on this whole list in terms of animation, along with the character posing and expressions. I love the baseball uniforms, like this off-white kind of cream palette is so nice. And there's so many moments I think are super cute, like Lily curled up on the ground while her Vulpix catches the baseball.
I read about catching a long time ago in a book! Oh no! I'm scared! Thanks so much, Snowy!
Conversely, the action is great too, like Kiawe and Ash having this really awesome animated showdown. All the pitches and hits are either really cool or really funny, and the expressions of the characters throughout are top class. To sum up the premise of this episode, Ash and his classmates have a game of Pokebase, aka the Pokemon equivalent of baseball, with this professional player as part of their studies. It's pretty much just baseball, but Pokemon can play too. Team Rocket happens to be passing through and challenges the twerps to a game of baseball, and the stakes for Team Rocket are higher than if Pikachu was on the line. If Team Rocket wins, Jessie will get the signature of her favorite baseball player ever. There's so many funny moments throughout this episode, I could literally spend all day talking about it. The animation of Kiawe's special techniques look amazing, but the different pitchers' reactions and shock while getting hit is also hilarious. Plus, look at Pikachu pitching. This is so cute but badass. He has a little hat. Oh my goodness. Team Rocket decides their best way to win is to just hit the ball at Snorlax the whole time because he's slow and immobile and asleep. Jessie steps up to bat and does this crazy spinning swing and actually smacks the ball perfectly. However, it turns out Jessie doesn't actually know how to play baseball and runs the wrong way and gets thrown out at first. While this is funny, every time I watch this back, I just say to myself, look at Jessie's poses and expressions. They're so dynamic and cool and so well drawn, these look amazing. We get a scene of Mimikyu trying to destroy Pikachu with a baseball due to his jealousy of Pikachu, and seeing him get switched out for Meowth, but seeing him in the background is so funny to me, like, what is he thinking right now? What is going on in his head? Apparently, Meowth has undergone harsh training to capture Pikachu, and that translates to his competitive spirit on the pitcher's mound. This almost feels like a trope of sports anime in a way, like he's been training in the mountains just for this moment, like we saw in Urasematsura earlier. Meowth's reaction to getting his baseball hit is so funny, but then again, seeing the animation of Jessie grabbing the ground ball and throwing it to first base looks so well done. When you think about it, the runner was safe anyways, so to me, I always see it as the artist wanting to draw the Pokemon characters doing real baseball stuff, and it just looks amazing. You know, they could have just moved on to the next batter, they didn't need to animate this sequence, but it looks so nice, I'm so happy we saw it. So it's the bottom of the last inning, and the still immobile Snorlax is up to bat. Meowth throws his special pitch he's done secret training for, but unfortunately for him, the baseball hits Snorlax's bat and is put into play. While the ball is rolling around, Snorlax's trainer, the professional baseball player, activates Snorlax's Z move, which fires up Snorlax and causes him to run the bases super fast, causing a collision at home plate. The reactions to Team Rocket are priceless. This looks like it could be like a Gorillaz album cover or something. The game ends with Team Rocket losing, but in a heartfelt moment, Jessie's given a signed card from the baseball player. It almost feels like she could have a change of heart from this alone. And if you're not familiar with Pokemon Sun and Moon, there's a running gag throughout the series a lot of people find pretty annoying, in which their Pokemon Beware grabs Team Rocket and runs off with them. It's kind of like how they would be blasting off again in the older Pokemon series. But seeing Jesse get the card here and losing it because of Beware is just sad to me. Yes, Team Rocket is the bad guys, and we don't want to encourage or reward the bad guys by letting good things happen to them, I guess. But they're my favorite characters in the show. Heck, they're my favorite characters ever. If it was me writing this ending, I think you could keep Beware taking them away, despite Jessie finally having a moment with her idolized baseball player. But what if the card got ripped in half as she was taken away, and she has half a signed card to remember this moment? She could cherish the card in the moment despite it being ripped now, while still begrudgingly being taken away from her idol. It's not perfect, but it'd leave me watching the end of the episode saying haha, aw, instead of wanting to break my computer. The episode has a really strong case in my heart for being the #1 baseball episode, but the ending always leaves a sour taste for me. Plus it has a little bit of odd pacing to have a baseball game amongst themselves, then having one with Team Rocket after. But in terms of action, comedy, animation, this episode is elite in all ways. We get to see some Pokemon showcase their abilities, like Poplio blowing a bubble to catch the ball at first base. And I really need to make a quick side tangent about this blown bubble catch. Whenever I see Poplio catch this baseball, I always think they're gonna call the runner safe because Poplio is bobbling the ball / doesn't have full possession. And it always reminds me of one of the most infamous baseball calls of all time. In 2010, Armand Galarraga, one of my favorite pitchers at the time, had a perfect game going into the 9th inning with 2 outs. On the last out of the game, Armando went to cover first base, and while he beat the runner to the bag, the runner was called safe. The baseball seemed to move a little in the glove of the pitcher, and this little bobble could have been the difference of a perfect game. And while everyone, including the umpire, acknowledged that this call was incorrect and that Armando should have had a perfect game, the bright side of this situation is that Armando Galarraga took this ruined perfect game with humor and class. And the umpire of the game, Jim Joyce, was apologetic, and it was handled with a lot of class by all of those involved. This is what I think of when I see Poplio bobble this baseball, but it's considered an out in Pokebase, so hey, what do I know? With that being said, let's move on to the #1 entry. As an honorable mention, before I get to #1, I should really quickly talk about the baseball episode of Fooly Cooley. It's hard for me to describe this episode because it's really not a baseball episode under the hood. Baseball is more of a symbol for maturing. Sometimes it's a symbol for, adult stuff. But this episode often makes its way onto anime baseball lists, and even if it didn't, it's a lot of people's favorite episode of Fooly Cooley, even people's favorite episodes of any show ever. So I'd feel bad not including it on this list. There's a really cool sequence at the end where the protag is basically hitting a giant bomb from outer space that looks like a baseball, but there's a lot going on in this episode that can be a bit confusing even if you've watched the show, but there's no doubt about the epicness of this final scene. The music, the animation, the protagonist standing up for himself, taking a swing, you know, it's pretty cool. Fooly Cooley is pretty coolly. So after a lot of thought and deliberation, I had to decide my #1 entry on this list. Process of elimination might tell you that this is Samurai Champloo's baseball episode. It's always stuck out to me as a great example of baseball with a great plot and subtext as well. This is one of my favorite animes ever, and the baseball episode is no exception. I've linked in the description my full video analysis on this episode of Samurai Champloo, so I'll spare my review of the episode here, but if you'd like to check out a full video on why I love this episode of Samurai Champloo, the video is titled Why Samurai Champloo's Baseball Episode is a Masterpiece of Historical Fiction. To give you a taste of what this episode's about, you get your epic samurai action baseball, but underneath the surface, this episode makes some really interesting historical connections to the isolationist policies of Japan and their international affairs, especially in Kyushu with the likes of the Dutch East India Company. A game of baseball is played between the samurais and a group of Americans, including Abner Doubleday, one of the alleged creators and founders of baseball, who teams up with Commodore Perry, an American naval officer who has significant history in connecting America and Japan. But yeah, check out the video for the full analysis of what makes a great baseball anime episode. I really feel I can give both the baseball and the cultural context their own time to shine. To sum up what I love and look for in baseball episodes, as you can probably see from this list, the big things I look for when watching an anime baseball episode are how how much actual baseball is played, how do these characters play baseball in a unique way only they can do with their powers and abilities, is the episode funny, are there a lot of jokes and gags, what about the action, is it animated well, is it badass, and for most of the top entries on this list, I can safely say they do all of these things, some better than others, but overall I hope this video helps show why I love anime baseball episodes. I hope you enjoyed kicking back and watching some anime baseball with me, and if you have a favorite episode or anything else you'd like to share, I'd love to hear. Feel free to check out the Samurai Champloo video on my channel in the description to hear all about number 1, and feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next week where I actually talk to the creator of that show Kappa Mikey you might remember from the mid-2000s. It's a really cool interview where I find out more about Kappa Mikey as a whole, along with the theme song and just interesting production details from the creator himself. So thanks for watching, I'll see you next time. Bye.